you see, my Jedi powers are far beyond yours.
Tanner Holmes out of the race cars. Rising on top of the wing. Make some noise for Tanner Holmes.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Dan. Welcome back to the fastest podcast on the planet, and I'm really excited to bring you this one. I'm sitting here today with Tanner Holmes. Tanner, how you doing, brother?
Doing phenomenal, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, this is really exciting for me. I've been watching your videos for a while, so to actually sit here and talk to you and the little bit we've talked so far is great.
Absolutely.
So about your videos, something that really made my my research here really easy is that the last 5 years of your career are all on YouTube, and then it was really cool to go through your career and see the transition. But something I kind of want to talk about here to begin this is your early career, something that isn't on YouTube. What do those years look like leading up to the vlogs beginning?
I was pretty much just like a normal kid at the track. I wouldn't say there was anything that stuck out about me. I was just learning how to drive, and that was something I wish I had more footage of, and kind of what ended up inspiring the YouTube stuff. But basically, like, I got into it because my dad's buddy, encouraged my dad to get me into racing. My parents weren't racers. They didn't even go to the races often. If anything, when they did, it was more of like a hangout spot. You know what I mean? Being a little bit younger, high school, early getting into their adult years. But my dad didn't really have any racing friends or anything like that. Maybe went to a couple of occasional NASCAR races. So their outlook on the sport was different. They didn't even know dirt racing. Their form of racing was NASCAR, kind of the typical person, outlook on it. So we ended up getting started when I was 5 years old, about 2008, 2009. And we just went to the track. We had a little trailer, we had a little go-kart, and we got that go-kart because my dad's buddy, my dad has a family, we have a family business, and he was doing a work with a client. And he happened to have all this go-kart stuff, which was, what we came to know as Outlaw Karts. And eventually they kind of made a deal because my dad's buddy encouraged him, over and over, like, hey, this is something I think you guys would like. And my family wasn't really for it originally, but eventually they went down that road, and we went to a race to watch, which is our local track, the Southern Oregon Speedway, which at the time was actually very popular for Outlaw Karts, which it's not as much now. But that's kind of how I got my start. And we would just go to the races and we would race. And I won my first race at the end of my first full season. So it took some time. That was probably 15 shows. But, as you can imagine, just like any kid, I went out on the track. I was slow. I wasn't on the gas. I spun out plenty of times. I wrecked. When I came up to another car, I didn't know how to pass them. It took me, I'd follow them for 15, 20 laps. So that was kind of a little bit of what my early years were like. So there was really nothing I would say stand out about me. We were just a family having fun, trying to figure out if we really wanted to invest more in the sport and continue moving forward.
Are Outlaw Karts kind of the norm on the West Coast there? Like, are flat karts still popular, or is it mostly just all Outlaw Kart stuff out there?
I think specifically where I'm at, Outlaw Karts are kind of what is the way of getting started for dirt racing. If you go farther south or you go like way north to Washington, micro sprints are very popular. Those seem to be a little bit harder to get into. I've never ran them. I haven't even been to many races for them, but just the cost versus an Outlaw Kart is those are a little bit more of an investment. So, that is one of the other barriers to entry to get into dirt racing. But where I'm at, we have our local track, which is trying to do Outlaw Kart stuff, which is like 20 minutes from my house, Southern Oregon Speedway. We have the Roseburg Indoor, which I've shot some vlogs at. They race. They're about an hour and a half north up I-5, but they're still in like the southern part of Oregon. And then Red Bluff's 3 hours south of me. Cycleland, which is a summer track, is 4 hours south. I mean, honestly, within the last 5 years, the sport has just like boomed. It seems like, we've always had these tracks, but car counts are rising. People are getting involved. People want to race, and they want something to do. So I would say, like, right now, the most popular way to get your kids started in any form of racing, on the West Coast is Outlaw Karts, just because of, for some reason, people like them, kids love them, and you can race them for so many years, and kind of just transition through each class.
And you bring up a good point there, because here in the Midwest, at least, flat carts are still probably the most popular when it comes to the entry level form of racing for kids. But something that we're seeing a really big boom in here is the Outlaw Kart craze. It's really coming from the West Coast. We have a track here called Thunderhill Speedway. They have the Outlaw Kart Nationals. Something that I would love to get you to, by the way. I would really love to get you to that. And we can talk about that more on a later date. But I also believe that the Outlaw Kart craze kind of revolves around safety. You know, when you can put your kid into something that has a wing over the top of it and a roll cage, and I'm sure you can attest to the fact that you are pretty safe in those carts, you know, especially with the full containment seats and everything.
Oh, absolutely. Like outlaw carts are, I think racing in general is more safer than it ever has been. But talking specifically about the carts, I mean, we don't see, rarely anything happen. And usually when stuff does, it's because it's like kind of an open cockpit. Obviously, things can come in, and that is probably the biggest danger. But for the most part, I mean, these kids are going out there and they get involved in crashes and they're completely fine. And I think it's just a huge testament to all the manufacturers, stepping up their game, safety bars, really good rules, and the safety equipment that we can wear right there in our seat, with our head and neck restraint and our helmets and whatnot. Everything is just advanced so much. But, like my mom would always joke, I played football in middle school. I mean, every other play, there's a kid down on the field and whatnot, and kids are getting hurt left and right. Outlaw Kart, you don't see that at all. I mean, like, we like I said, it's really rare to have an incident, and when it does, everyone is like super freaked out. But I mean, like I said, most times it's just if it does happen, it's the perfect storm. But these kids are going out there and they're able to bang doors, race hard. And in the older divisions, we can do the same thing, and we can put it all out on the line and know that we have pretty good odds of being completely fine at the end of it.
For somebody who doesn't have much of a knowledge, I guess, when it comes to Outlaw Karts, could you just kind of give us a quick rundown of what the ranking is for Outlaw Karts? Like, I know you just talked about there, you're in the older classes, the divisions, but can you talk a little bit about that, and then talk a little bit about the engine differences as well?
Yeah, so everywhere is a little bit different, but here on the West Coast, we have like 5 to 6 divisions, depending on what track you race at. So the youngest class is called the beginner box division, and they are just like a little, there's a handful of different manufacturers, but the main one, like QRC, they have their little car, which is known as the A90. That's like that's the name of the frame and cage, right? And so the beginner box division, it just has a little LO206 engine with a, I'm not as familiar with these cars or this engine package, because I didn't ever get the chance to run it. They just kind of switch things up, but basically beginner box, 5 to 8 years old. And honestly, nowadays, even that's more like 5 to 6, and people are moving up by 7 or 8. They're in the box stock division, which is the same car and engine package. But like I said, I think they run like a different slide. So, you get that 2 or 3 horsepower more. These engines, though, are only making, I believe, like between 6 and 9 horsepower. But all that's pretty huge when, you're on a little car that, weighs anywhere from, 280 to, 300 plus pounds. And you're sitting like an inch off the ground. So you have the beginner and box stock division, which is, like I said, kids from starting between 4 all the way up. You can run box stocks until 9, 10 years old. And then you move into the 250 division, which I like to say that's really where you get to start learning racecraft, because the younger divisions with the less horsepower, it's more about keeping the car straight and, working on perfecting your line and momentum, versus once you get in 250s, you have a lot more horsepower. And so you have the chance to run the bottom, run the top, try different lines, slide people, and not lose so much momentum. And that's a little bit of a bigger frame and cage, much larger than what we have for the beginner kids, obviously. And so you can start running 250s by 9, 10, 11 years old and run that for 3 or 4 years. And then kids are starting to transition into the open class, which is, that's the adult division, usually by 13 to 15 years old. And it seems like as the years are going on, kids are moving to that sooner and sooner and sooner. But, Red Bluff, for example, I actually like this. They have a rule, unless you've won the championship in the division before, you can't move up to open. So, most kids aren't able to move up till 14, 15, 16 years old, when, that's probably the best time, because you're racing against, grown men. So, right. So that's kind of what the open division looks like. There's a couple other classes, just depending on what tracks you go to. They have an open intermediate division, which is the open class. but the weight rule is 25 pounds less, and that's for younger kids trying to get some laps before they just get thrown to the wolves in the opens. Or some tracks also have the sportsman class, which is the 500 class, exact same car, exact same engine, but you have to weigh like between 25 and 50 pounds heavier. And it's for, you know, older guys that are maybe just looking to have some fun and not want to race with kids in the open class, or, you know, some of the best guys that, you know, they're just trying to get laps and do their thing.
Now you bring up Red Bluff, and this is a great transition into this because I'm really looking forward to asking you about this. Red Bluff is probably one of the coolest places in terms of dirt track racing that I can think of in the United States when it comes to what they've produced, the people that have come through there. Just to name a couple, Kyle Larson, Buddy Kofoid, Brad Sweet, Tyler Reddick. I mean, these are all individuals whom of which are doing unbelievable things. Kyle Larson specifically. So I want to talk to you a little bit and ask you a little bit about what that place brings on a weekly basis in terms of competitiveness, the aura around it, you know, just all of those things that come with a place with such history.
It is incredible. Like, to people that haven't been there, it's hard to describe, because one of the main questions I get is, you know, like exactly what you just asked, you know, why is Red Bluff that cool? You know, what is it about it? And then, you know, obviously if some people just see like certain parts of it, it's easy for it to get that bad reputation and not see the good sides of it. But basically, like, Red Bluff every winter is just it's a blast, and it's an experience. And the one thing I talk about is mainly what I think makes Red Bluff is, one, it's in the winter time, so there's not as much going on. So no matter what people race throughout the year, whether they're a full-time driver running sprint cars, if they only run outlaw carts, if they run micros, whatever, most guys come back to Red Bluff because, you know, they want to stay in the seat. They need to, you know, I need to be racing. If I want to be the best, I need to stay behind the seat of something, keep my skills sharp. Even though, you know, if I want to be a better sprint car driver, you know, even though it's not a sprint car, it helps me, you know, train my brain, you know, get put in positions to, you know, restarts, slide jobs, moves, all that. And it just keeps me behind the wheel. So I think that's a big part of it. And then also, just the atmosphere of it. It's inside a building, you know, we're indoors, the people there, the people you meet, seeing the same people each season, the competition. And because of what it's kind of built, and also not us having a lot of outlaw kart tracks in the area, there's nowhere else to be. So I think, you know, there's so many factors, and then also, I guess I should mention the history. It's been around the last 40 years. It started back in the 80s. So it's kind of just been the birthplace of outlaw karts, and turned into a racetrack where, like, if you want to continue to try to grow through the sport and you're racing outlaw karts, you need to be racing there, and maybe hopefully, you know, use that as a stepping stone into a new opportunity and something bigger, but hopefully getting noticed there. But I've always been a huge fan of Red Bluff. I'm its biggest supporter. I've been racing there like the last 12 years of my life and haven't missed a show. And I just feel like, even though, you know, it is go-karts, it is indoors, it is a small track, and there's so much to it. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And I feel like if I wouldn't have raced there and I would have raced somewhere else, I don't even think I would be talking to you today. You know, it's been that big in my career.
Well, and your career there has not, you know, you have not shied away from the accomplishments. And I'd love for you to talk about this yourself, but a couple that I want to specifically hit on, or one that I want to specifically hit on that seemed to be very special to you, especially at the time, was that Driver of the Year award. 2018, 2019, I believe, was the year. But that obviously was a big one for you. And then if you could transition into some of the other accomplishments that you've had there.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, one of the biggest things about Red Bluff is, you know, obviously we're racing at the same place like every week. So it's very similar week to week, is kind of the same thing. And just because there is so much competition, things can go wrong, or that's why there's always these different outcomes. And I like to joke, like, Red Bluff's a lot like a blender. But luckily, you know, we've had a lot of things go right through the last 12 years. And one of the biggest awards, like you mentioned, the Driver of the Year award, luckily we were able to win that in 2018, 2019 season. And what was so cool about that, and just some of the other stuff, is just, you know, like I said, what Red Bluff means to me, and just, you know, all the people that I've competed against there, met there, the relationships. And kind of that award is not only for, you know, on track success, but off track success and promoting the sport and whatnot. So for me, that was really cool because, you know, I not only love Red Bluff, but I love outlaw karts. Along with that, Red Bluff, there's special nights throughout the season. So, and every win there is big, but they have like the Tyler Wolf Memorial, which we won that this season. They have Perpetual Trophy Night, West Coast Nationals, and all that. And so throughout the years of racing, beginner, box, 250, kind of just moving up every single year, we've been able to win each of those a handful of times. But like I said, no matter if it's a weekly show, no matter if it's a big race, Red Bluff is just, it's incredible. All of the wins are hard, and you try to, cherish each and every one of them, because you literally never know. It's easy to get in a dry slump and not be able to be back in victory lane for a little bit.
And Red Bluff really does have fantastic racing. It's really fast. You're throwing heavy sliders. The tight is really track, the track is really tight. And I think that has really prepared you for the tracks that you're racing on now in a sprint car. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that transition from an Outlaw Kart to a sprint car, which is probably a lot easier than most others would have if they were coming out of anything else.
Absolutely. And not just Red Bluff in general, but just how Outlaw Karts race. Like I talked about, being so low to the ground, the power to weight ratio, it always feels like you're going extremely fast. So when I transitioned into a limited sprint, which is obviously like, it's our version of a starter sprint car class, like a 305 is in the Midwest, or, everywhere kind of has it a little bit different, but our starter class is like this limited. And so for me, when I first got in that, it actually felt really slow. Like it didn't feel very fast, just because I was so used to an Outlaw Karts. I mean, at Cycleland, which is the summer track down here that's very popular 4 hours south of me, that we would run at a good amount. I mean, we're doing like 70 miles an hour in qualifying, and that's just a really small track. So you're used to going fast and having, like you mentioned, slide jobs, restarts, everything thrown at you, and you don't have any time to think about it. So I felt like transitioning into a sprint car, it actually helped me a ton, because things still happen fast. And especially once you get into a 410, that feels very similar to an Outlaw Kart, where it's like, it's boom, boom, boom. And if you're not on your toes, and you're not literally on every single lap, I mean, especially with the competition you're racing against in that, compared to like a limited, you can get in trouble very easily and get put in a bad spot. So I feel like Outlaw Karts helped me in that, because just everything happens so quick. Also, we don't have suspension, which is maybe where like a lot of these kids that are running micros, it seems like maybe a micro drives more similar to a sprint car. So you've seen a lot of these micro kids have success, where, like I said, Outlaw Karts, you don't drive them the same, but there's a lot of things that they just help you with behind the wheel. I feel more on the mental side and the speed side of things, where, if you were to watch like an Outlaw Kart on board, a lot of it is about keeping the wheels straight and stuff, where a sprint car, with the shocks, the bars, the suspension, all that, you're sawing on the wheel a little bit more. But Outlaw Karts, like I've said, I mean, they definitely, I feel like, put me in the spot that I am today, as far as like learning all this stuff that I could transition from my younger years, which made it much easier, once I was in a wing sprint car.
When it came time for that transition, was this something you brought up to your parents, or was this something that they brought up to you? Was it kind of just a conversation, or?
I think it was something kind of more like throughout the years, I wouldn't say planned it, but it was just like, this was the direction that we wanted to head, because of the limited class. Like Outlaw Karts actually lately kind of rose in popularity. For a while, maybe back around 2010 or before, like the limited sprint thing wasn't super popular in the Northwest, but all of a sudden, a couple guys started to promote it more, and the car counts were rising. So that was kind of just like, hey, if you want to run sprint cars, instead of jumping right into a 360, which are extremely popular along the West Coast compared to the Midwest, where 410s are the thing out here, unfortunately 410 racing is not in as good as a spot as 360s. So we were like, all right, obviously that's a big jump just to go right into a 360. And there's a lot of local stuff around here for our limited. So we ended up going that route, but it was something that wasn't like an instant, like, hey, we're just going to go that direction. It was just because of some of the kids I had raced with that were older than me. We were able to kind of watch which direction those guys went and see, maybe what worked out, what didn't, and kind of therefore, kind of decide what was going to be best for us and take that leap, and then just see how it was going to go.
Now, speaking of transitions, at that point in time, your parents are probably a little bit worried about you getting in a sprint car. It's just lots faster. It's a bigger machine, but you can kind of relate to that in Carly, your younger sister, getting in a sprint car over the last couple of years. How was that for you as an older brother, watching your younger sister get in a car? Was it worrisome? Were you excited? I'm sure there were a lot of emotions there.
I was pretty worried, but I wasn't anything like my mom. My mom was pretty freaked out about the whole thing, just like she was for me. And I get that. I think where for Carly, where I actually felt most relaxed was like, I had done it before. So I knew exactly what she was going through. And I felt like as long as she trusted not just me, many people, but like, I guess, like I told her, I've ran all these tracks you're getting ready to run. I've done exactly, you're about to take the same steps I did. So I felt like if I would have had someone in my ear that had just done it, within the last 2 or 3 years, and I just would have had someone to trust a little bit, because, when I went out there, I talked to other drivers, I listened to what, these guys said, but still, like, there's something about, having someone super close to you. Like I said, if someone would have told me like, hey, you can definitely, hold it wide open, or you can run this line, like it's going to work, all these different things more on the racing side. I think that would have been more beneficial for me. So for her, I actually felt more relaxed and thought, she's going to pick it up. It's just going to take time, and just, be patient with her. But she's definitely going to have some moments here where, it's going to be really exciting, and she's going to have these good nights, because once she starts to pick it up, especially the limited, they're difficult to drive because they're a sprint car, but at the same time too, it's a starter class. So I think with, our Outlaw Kart competition and just, what we're used to racing, once you get going in those things, it's not I don't want to say it's relaxed or anything. It's hard, but it's just there's only so many guys you're really going up against, because, everyone else is learning as well. So if you beat the learning curve against most guys, you're going to be up with the front runners pretty quick, which for some of the races we saw Carly, she was very fast, and other nights it's tough. And that's just part of, the ups and downs of dirt racing and trying to, figure out sprint cars.
Yeah, she's definitely had some success in her first couple of years racing, and so did you. You in your first couple of years in the limited, you were quite successful, and it was very impressive to watch. Your first win, I believe, came at Southern Oregon Speedway, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to touch on that specifically because I think that is one of the coolest moments of a racer's career, when they are able to park that thing in victory lane for the first time. Now, I want you to talk to me a little bit about how you felt going into that race, how you were mentally during it, and how it was pulling into victory lane there.
It was definitely one of the greatest nights of my racing career, of my life, just because that's something you kind of never forget. Going into it, I knew we were going to be really good. Southern Oregon Speedway is my local track. There's just a little extra confidence when you're there, because it is, we're racing in front of friends and family and hometown fans. And I've been there for many years, just being that kid in the grandstands watching, because, when the World of Outlaws rolled through town, when Oregon Speed Week rolled through town, I'm talking maybe 2012 through 2015, when I was just a fan at the races, I watched all these big shows. And that season we had been fast many times. I think we ran third like 3 times in a row right before we actually won our first race. But, the progress was showing. We were starting to run better and better. And then about a month before I won that first race, there was a big show out there for limiteds, and it was actually like $2,000 to win. It was like double the pay of a normal night. And that night I think I qualified good, won my heat race, won the dash. Like, I was looking like it was probably going to be my night with the speed that we had. And I got passed early on in the race and ended up running second. And it was just, one of those deals where I got really comfortable running my line. Someone found a better line. I lost the race. And I felt like that night at Southern Oregon, about a month before I won my first race, is kind of what helped me win that next race, because I knew exactly, what to do and where I went wrong and what I missed, which was I was running the bottom when I was leading. Someone ran the top, passed me. So then, a month later when I won my first race, it was all about, trying to continuously find different lines, be on my toes. And like I ended up doing, I found the top actually that race, and was able to just kind of pull away because I found what was the best line on the track. So going into the night, I was confident, and that night it just ended up playing through to where we were the best car, and I was able to do my job behind the wheel for all 25 laps and, get it done.
And you can go watch that video on Tanner's YouTube channel. It's a really cool video to watch. And Tanner, you have, as we talked about in the beginning, you've been documenting your career here over the last 5 years. And I want to talk specifically about some of the goods and bads of social media and documenting your journey. Something that, might be prevalent for some and not so much for others is, as a young person, I feel like you might catch a little bit more flack. You're maybe given a little bit more of a hard time. Was that something that you had to kind of battle through in the beginning? And for somebody who's young, how do you recommend them battling through that toxicity of YouTube?
Yeah, I would say I even still like battle with it a little bit to this day, here and there. Not so much like posting videos and all that. It's more of the situational stuff, because throughout, since I started in 2016, especially in dirt racing, people are following me through my whole night. And it's me documenting it as well. I have a little bit of help, but it's mainly me. It's not like I have someone following me around and, we're cutting this out and this out. It's just like I pick up the camera, record, talk, boom, go on the track, go. And, you guys get to literally ride there with me on my cage or whatever. So it definitely was hard when I first started, mainly because I was still in school as well. So I had a lot of people that weren't even involved with racing. I would say that was more difficult than anything because they didn't understand it. So you got to think I'm going to school each day and I'm posting these YouTube videos and you can imagine what that was like, but it wasn't bad. I quickly got over it and you just kind of have to be a little bit mentally tough. But nowadays, realistically in anything you can get flack for because of just everyone's doing whatever. And so you kind of just learn quickly, it really doesn't matter. And nowadays, it's just like you post whatever and, whatever people say, it doesn't, they're still watching type deal. But yeah, it took a little bit of time. And like I said, even to this day, some comments, sometimes you just it's a little dig at you, but you quickly learn to let that go and realize that it's not a big deal.
Well, I have to give you props, Tanner. I consider you to be at the same level as a Hunt the Front type of channel. You may not have the 100,000 view plaque yet or the 100,000 subscriber plaque yet, but I know you're going to get there someday. I believe you've paved the way for people in the sprint car community to make content like this. I can tell you that when I was sitting there racing go-karts this last year, right before I got my sprint car, I was watching you taking little things okay, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna do that. There's little things like that. So I'm really appreciative of what you've done. But to get that successful, Tanner, you've got to be really good at marketing. And something else I'm really impressed at with you is at a young age, you've been able to pick up the concept of marketing yourself and your brand very well. How did you really learn to do that? That might be a broad question, but that's not something that most 14, 15, 16-year-olds pick up very easily.
I'm not really actually 100% sure. I think part of it in a way was, I don't use the word necessarily natural, but my parents both are business people and involved in running companies and stuff. So I think a lot of just them wore off on me in a way, just at that. But also I just did a lot of research myself. Right when I started posting to YouTube, I immediately saw it from a standpoint of I want to grow. It was fun, but I already started setting goals of I want to make this my job. I don't know how to do anything else. I didn't want to go work for someone or whatever. I wanted to try to build it and at least give it my best shot. And then if one day it didn't work out, it was all right, I gave it my best shot. I literally put all my effort into. But I think a big thing was I just watched a lot of videos. I literally went on YouTube and I, how to get more views, how to grow my channel, how to reach out to a new audience. And I just watched a lot of videos on what people said. And to this day, literally all the time, when I scroll through my phone, on the app TikTok, a lot of my videos are just people giving advice and stuff because I consume so much of that content. And I just try to listen to what everyone has to say because it obviously worked for someone. So how can I not maybe tie what I'm doing with racing into it? And I think that's specifically in the last 2 years, that's where I'm getting better on marketing everywhere but YouTube, in the sense of when I first started posting on YouTube, that was the main platform I was using. Now I'm really trying to expand to everything else because obviously there's so many people on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And, now I'm starting to grasp that and how to do that. So I also figured at the end of the day, if I did this YouTube channel, it didn't work, I had all this experience that I could take to someone else and, market for them or another race team or whatnot. And just try to, build my skills. But I absolutely love it. I think it's the coolest thing in the world, social media and whatnot. I know there's a lot of negatives out there about it, but for me, in a way, social media is my life. So much of it is on there and I consume so much on there. So that's just how I roll.
Yeah, social media can definitely be a negative, toxic place, but when you're doing it and using it the way that you are, I believe it can be an unbelievably positive concept. And I think that you're a prime example of that because you've been able to pick up a lot of concepts that, I had to go to school to figure out, that you just were able to come across and understand. And that's an awesome level of maturity that I don't think a lot of people have. So very heavy props to you there, Tanner.
Thank you.
Now I want to ask a little bit about this whole social media thing because of the fact that this is probably not something that most people might think about. Does YouTube and social media add pressure to you on any given night to perform better? Or if you don't have a great night, is that something you're thinking about? I've had people ask me that, and I'm doing little go-kart races, but you're on a whole different level. So how does that affect you?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't actually let it get to me too much. It's more on the bad nights. And like actually, I think the more difficult part for me is like people saw me where I started because like you said, my last 5 years are all on YouTube. And so they've seen every good night, every bad night, the transition. Like people are legitimately following me as I am learning how to drive a sprint car and race with some of the best. And so they're seeing all my wins, my good nights, my bad nights, my mistakes, things I did wrong. And so for me, that's the more the hard part is on bad nights, how to make something good out of it, how to explain myself or, admit when I did something wrong or how I should have done something better. So I mean, in a way, yes, there definitely, I think anyone would be lying if they said there wasn't pressure, I mean, there is, but that's a lot of it. Regardless, if I wasn't doing YouTube, there'd still be pressure because I put a lot on myself, I always want to perform. And so I think a lot of it is just, I just want to do like any other driver, I want to do good. And I guess another area is especially when we go to some of these big races, there are a lot of fans where that has changed over the last, especially like 2020, there wasn't as many fans like this last year. A lot of the races we're going to, there's people coming up to us that are there specifically to watch us. So I know no matter what, they're just happy to have us there. But when there's people there that are watching you, you obviously want to do as good as you can and put on a show for them. But for me, like, it's just, now kind of how we run our program and how we do everything. Like, I can't really see us doing it any different. So we're just trying to build and put the right things in place so we can, have longevity and build our program to the level that we hope to be in the next 5 years.
Before we get off of social media concepts here and get back to the 2021 season, something I'm very excited to talk about, I just want to say something else about your YouTube channel. That being, I'm very impressed by the ability you have to reach the younger generation of racers. I believe that you have an inspiration over a lot of kids that, I don't even know if you really know it. I was here in Minnesota. I'm doing some kart racing, and kids are talking to me about my channel, and they'd ask me, do you know Tanner Holmes? You bet I do. So there's kids all over the country that are watching you, and you're inspiring them. And I think you're inspiring a lot of sprint car drivers too, which that's what we love, baby. Let's grow that sport. Let's grow the wings, right?
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like the getting the young kids involved is a huge thing to me as far as the big picture. Like, we want to win races, we want to do all sorts of things, but like one day down the road, when I get out of the seat, because one day I'm going to for sure. I'd love to own a track and stuff like that. And I think getting young kids involved is so big, especially nowadays, like racing. It is growing in popularity, but if we don't get these kids, from a young age and get them excited and add something to it besides just, I think when a lot of kids get involved, a lot of parents put a lot of pressure on the kids when it needs to be something that's fun. And, I think if you can, like you said, inspire them, and through the videos has definitely helped a lot, I think it helps them get some longevity in the sport as well, because they can hopefully relate to content that I or anybody post, because it's not all wins every single night. It's easy to see that, but there's a lot to the sport,
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. Well, speaking of that, Tanner, let's move on to the 2021 season here. You did a lot of racing. You did a lot of traveling. You ran a lot of 410 shows, a lot of 360s. If I am correct about this, you started off the year with a trip down to Tulare. That seemed like a big event for you to start off the year. Why don't you talk about that a little bit before we move into some of the Midwest stuff?
Yeah, we ran Tulare, and then luckily we were able to run one race before that in Arizona, which was my first 410 start. And all that was a big way to start the year with those 5 shows that we ran in total. Because I never ran a 410 before, and I wasn't sure, the track I was going to, the one specifically in Arizona, it's known for being pretty fast. There was going to be some good guys there. It wasn't like there was just some local California guys down there. I mean, Donnie Schatz was there, Aaron Wright. So the list kind of goes on. There was probably 10 or 15 really, really good cars, which was good because I was going to get to learn from them. But at the same time, that's kind of getting thrown to the wolves right there. So we went down there and ran that. We had some problems, had one good night out of the 3. Also got to do a test night, which was valuable because I got to run some laps before just like getting thrown out there for hot laps and qualifying on, a race night. So I don't think I would have changed anything about where we ran our 410 for the first time. I think Arizona Speedway, like I said, was a good track to go to because it's super wide, super banked, smooth. And I mean, you can just go out there and make laps and not have to worry about too many things. Then we went down to Tulare and actually ran really good. It felt like we started off the season on a really good note. We ran the 410 and then I got in the 360 and the 360 felt so much slower, like way slower. And with some good California cars, we ran 5th the first night down there with those guys. And then I think we ran top 10 the other night. So not a bad way to start the season. But, going forward, we knew we were going to have to run these difficult races, as we really had a tough schedule in 2021. So we were just trying to see kind of where we, stacked up against some of those guys before we got started and went to the Midwest.
Part of that tough schedule was the first Midwest trip, that being the Ohio Speed Week. I'd like to ask a little bit about the differences that you saw between West Coast sprint car racing and Midwest sprint car racing, not only sanctioning rules and stuff like that, because I know the West Coast has some stuff, I guess, environmentally, that kind of affects how the sanctioning body operates, but also the track differences, driving differences, all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in a short story before we get into the long story part, I mean, the Midwest, in my opinion, is just way better. There's some less rules, like you mentioned, on the environmental side, but just 410 racing is so healthy, where right now they're working on doing that for the West Coast, but we just run a lot of 360 stuff. And then, like I mentioned, the limited stuff's popular. So in order for us to run 410 shows, besides, the 20 or 25 that they have kind of throughout California during the year, we were going to have to go to the Midwest. And we had talked about going to Ohio Speed Week or wanting to hit a speed week of some sorts. And we knew that obviously that's a big thing to do. We knew going into it what we were getting into, as we were going to be running up against 50 cars every night. It was going to be very difficult to make the show. We were going to be on tracks that we had never even seen before. And we didn't even know, we didn't have like a baseline setup or anything. We're just, we're literally learning every single night. And also just how the tracks are different. Ohio's known for being super slick, very dusty, very crumbly material, and just nothing really, we have slick stuff out here in the Northwest, but I mean, the saying goes, everywhere I've been, they always say the farther east you go, the slicker it gets. And that is so true, especially once you get out to the state of Ohio. I am thankful, though, that we went out there. The Ohio fans are insane. There's so many people at the races. And I think for people in the Midwest that have never been to the West Coast, it's cool out here. There's some awesome tracks, but the atmosphere is just so much different. I mean, racing means something in the Midwest. For like our local stuff in Oregon, there's fans and stuff, but I mean, there's times we'll go to the races and like after the races, we could run up front and no one even comes to our trailer really after, if that makes sense. Like there's not a lot of people. They're just not super interested in the sport versus like Ohio. I mean, the amount of people walking around packed every single night in the grandstands, thousands and thousands and thousands. It was just, that was crazy. So the biggest thing though, I talked about getting on different tracks. The first night we ran Attica, which was a complete, curveball, very different than anything I had ever ran in my whole life. And like I said, the biggest thing, a lot of those places, they just get so dirty, and how you have to race them is just, is completely different. So much momentum. You have to drive the car so hard. And then also with just my limited 410 experience, I'm also still learning how to drive a 410 on these new conditions. But we had a couple of good nights where we made the show. I think 2 out of the 6 nights we made the show, almost made it on one of the other ones before we had a little incident in our heat race. But for the most part, I think there was some wins. There was obviously some difficult nights where you're like, man, I don't even know how we're going to go to the next track, because like this was just so tough and now we got to do it all over again. But it's kind of also one of those things when you get to the end of the week, you wish you could just go and redo it, because there's so much you learn that if I could go run all those tracks again the next week, I definitely think we would have already improved a good amount.
You talked about atmosphere, Tanner, in some place that I believe has one of the most unbelievable sprint car atmospheres on the planet. Eldora and this track seem to rival each other, is Knoxville. Yeah. And you had the opportunity to run laps at the Knoxville Nationals in a 360. 360 Nationals down there. Tell me about that experience. I'm sure as somebody who's been a sprint car fan for years, that was an unbelievable experience for you.
Oh, absolute dream come true. There's no other way to really put it. The sprint car capital of the world, Knoxville, the town itself, another very similar to Ohio, is that like everything revolves around racing. People come to the races, people are fans. I guess that's all they have to do back there. But it was a 10 out of 10 experience. You know, I've ran Knoxville on many sprint car video games. You always hear it talked about. Obviously, the Nationals 410 specifically are huge every single year. You see someone walk away with $150,000, and there's nothing like it. So for us to go back there, we got to run with the All-Stars there for a night and then right into 360 Nationals. Obviously I was excited, but I was pumped because I felt like we were going to have a good chance to run fairly well there if we could pick it up, because I actually tend to like larger racetracks. I don't know what it is. We have a lot of bull rings out here on the West Coast, but
yeah,
I feel comfortable when I can kind of get out and do my own thing. And it's so weird because I come from Outlaw Karts where we're literally in everybody's door every lap.
absolutely.
For the sprint car, for me, I just felt comfortable when I could sit back, hold the wheel straight, and really work on a lot of wing speed and running different lines, and also, getting your race car to where it can roll around a big track at a really fast pace. So Knoxville, to get to run some laps there, it's actually not too difficult in the sense just to go in a circle, because like I said, you have the wing under you, so you can just hold the wheel straight, car wings over, rolls through the corner. So nice. It's all about locking your elbows. And then obviously a lot of it is about having a really good setup and a lot of horsepower under you, because all of that matters so much because everyone's so close, but also not, all those little things make such a big difference. But to get to run there, I learned a lot. That was, I guess, technically the biggest track I had ran. Because, it doesn't really get too much bigger than that. But, as far as the track goes, that was phenomenal. But then we literally were right across the street in the parking lot from the Sprint Car Hall of Fame. The fans in Knoxville, very similar to Ohio, as everyone's so friendly, welcoming, supported us. And, I could not believe what it was like back there. It was everything I imagined, but, then when we come back to the West Coast, it's just two total opposites for, what racing is like.
It's really cool to get that perspective, because I don't think a lot of Midwest sprint car drivers really understand how, I guess, lucky we are to have the atmosphere. And, we may not be Pennsylvania, but I think we've got a pretty good thing going here. And it's exciting to hear you enjoyed the trip out here as well. Now, you had talked a little bit about learning at Knoxville and learning at some of these other tracks, but here's where I believe you had the largest learning experience. You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but running with the World of Outlaws for 3 straight nights. And let's be honest with each other, Tanner, you were not there to win the big show. That was not, maybe we all as racers want to go win it, but we both know that David Gravel and Brad Sweet and Carson Macedo, that was what was going to happen. Now I'm going to go through a little bit of the 3 nights here. Night 1, your night ended on lap 22. Back end came around on you there. I think it was in 2. And that's how that night ended. Night 2, first of all, I have to say, I believe it was night 1. Your heat race was completely stacked. You had David Gravel, Brad Sweet, Jacob Allen, Craig Kinzer, and Rico Abreu all in your heat race.
Yep.
That's unbelievable. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But then now night 2, your heat race consists of the entire Shark Racing team and one of my personal favorites, James McFadden. Your feature finish there was in 18th. Night 3, racing for $25,000. Had a little bit of problems. You ended up running 40 laps. And again, that's something we'll talk to. And I believe you finished 19th, if I'm not mistaken, that last night.
Something like that. Yep.
So now let's talk about that, because I'm not knocking you by saying that, because I'm sure you learned more running where you did on those 3 nights than you had the entire season.
Yeah, running with the Outlaws will definitely straighten you up. The All-Stars are right there, and there was a lot of cars at those events. But I think the Outlaws, the top 5 through 7 through 10, actually, just all of those guys are so good. And it was nice that we were going somewhere we were familiar with, Skagit. So it wasn't like I hadn't ran any laps, but I think a big thing about that weekend is just we didn't cross our T's and dot our I's. I'm not saying we were, like you said, we were not going to probably win, but I think we could have ran just a little bit better, been in a better spot to, make some better laps and possibly beat a couple of guys. The Northwest doesn't have a lot of 410 racing. So when the Outlaws come through, we usually have just enough for a full field. So, I mean, like you said, my heat race, you're rolling off from 7th in a heat race. And, if you're lucky, if you're going to pass 6th, 410s with wings on them alone at most tracks, the heat races are pretty fast. So it's hard to pass. But then when you have to pass Brad Sweet or Hodenshield or all those guys, I mean, good luck. But no, that was a huge learning experience in just getting to run a 410 at Skagit as well. I think that was a good place to run because I was familiar with it. But man, I feel like it's even harder to beat the Outlaws at a place like that because it's so fast and it doesn't slow down. So, I mean, you have to run at such an incredible pace. And you mentioned the 40 laps. We didn't have a yellow. I mean, so I think it took about 8 minutes, and you have 8 minutes to be on top of it. And once I got going, like I was actually pretty solid, but by then they've already lapped 10 cars by the time you're able to really get going and everyone spreads out. I think at one point I was behind Casey Kane. He had just passed me. I think he was running like 3rd maybe, but I was running behind him and I was like, man, I feel really good. All of a sudden I started making some really good laps. And it's just for those guys, I mean, you have to be on every single lap and you have to be as good as them if you want to even run with them, let alone beat them. So it's, the Outlaws are insane. I think at some other tracks, like I said, Skagit was a good one to run laps, but as far as beating them, it's going to be even more difficult. We got to run with them at Grays Harbor at the end of that weekend, and there was a couple less cars, but I felt better because, it's the place got slicker. It slowed down. We're able to, I think for a guy like me or any local, that makes it a little bit easier because those guys can just run at such a pace that is so hard to match. I mean, that's why they're the fastest in the world.
Well, and then part of being the fastest in the world is getting a lot of the cool things that come with the Outlaws. And for those of us who haven't experienced this, I'm just going to ask you, what was it like to, first of all, be a part of the drivers' intros? Because that must have been super cool. 2 was the 4 wide. The 4 wide. Those are things I dream about, and you've been able to live those. What was that like, being a part of that experience and being part of that group?
Stuff like that, you don't even actually realize in a way until, well, obviously it happens, but then after the fact, the 4 wide was something I thought about after. And then another moment, I mentioned Casey Kane, but once it wasn't at Skagit when I wasn't behind him at Skagit, but at Grays Harbor, we were actually racing for position. And I remember under yellow, he had just passed me. I made one little mistake. And because I for a little bit, I was ahead of Jacob Allen, Sheldon, and it was Casey because he had some bad luck at the beginning of the night, but he passed me. And under yellow, I just remember thinking like, man, I am right behind Casey Kane. Like obviously NASCAR driver, a sprint car ace as well. But I remember I'm sitting behind him. I'm like, man, I am right behind him. If I get a good restart here, I might be able to pass him back. So little things like that. And same with racing with some of the best, you think about it, in the moment or just after the fact. And it's like, you kind of realize, what you're up against. But for me, how I kind of look at the situation is like, yes, it sucks because you obviously always want to run better. A 19th place finish is nothing, you're pumped about. But at the same time, I felt like this last season with so many hard races we ran, in a way, there was some comfort in the sense of it was like, you look at the fields and you're like, all right, so that's how good we need to get to. We've raced with the best. So now we have an idea. We know what we need to do and which direction we need to head. It doesn't get any better than that. So that's where we need to get to if we want to, elevate our program to the level we would like to be at.
And I just believe that the experiences that we're talking about right now are going to lead to a very successful 2022 and beyond. But with the new year coming around here, Tanner, I got to ask you, just as we start to close this up here, what is your 2022, light schedule as of now? What does that look like? Do you have any major goals and any places to race? Also, what do I have to do to get you to Minnesota?
Oh, shoot. I definitely want to get out that way. We're trying to put stuff together. The hard part right now, what's actually a big curveball in our schedule. I talked about how 410 racing is kind of been light on the West Coast. Well, we have a couple of the right people in place. So now all of a sudden we have more 410 shows than ever out here, which makes it difficult to go to the Midwest as much as we would like to. So I think with a couple of things that have changed recently in our program that I mean, we want to travel, but there's some things kind of going on more behind the scenes that we're trying to put in place to where we can and have the right help. Because obviously going to the Midwest, you know, if it's just me and my dad, like, good luck. You know, like I said, all these teams have crew guys and stuff. So we're trying to put the right things in place and get that figured out. But realistically, I definitely want to be back at Knoxville. I think that's where we want to get to for Knoxville Nationals. And this year we would like to also run the 410 portion. So I think you can definitely, for the most part, count on it's looking good that we're going to be able to do that. I do got to figure out if we're going to do Ohio again. I would absolutely love to. The hardest part right now is there's a miniature 410 speed week right in the beginning or end of May, beginning of June in the Northwest, because out here we have King of the West 410s. And like I said, they have all these big shows now. They have a bigger schedule than ever. So there's all these races we can run right in our backyard. And those races lead up to the week after Ohio Speed Week ends at Skagit, we have a $50,000 to win 410 show called the Dirt Cup. Because this year it switched from 360s to 410s, which is what it originally was years back. So there's a lot more, or there's that. And then there's just a lot more races we can run. And we're still kind of waiting on some of our schedules for out here. So it's really tough to say exactly where we're going to be. I know the Midwest has a lot of things we want to experience again. And I'd like to go back to a lot of those tracks, because obviously when you run a track once, the second time is just 10 times better. But I didn't get the chance to really do that. This last year was almost all new tracks for me. So, you know, I would like to go back and run these places again to really show some of that progress. But also it would be nice to run some of the stuff around here if we're going to have some bigger money races with also a good amount of competition at tracks I'm definitely familiar with. So I feel like that would be an opportunity to, you know, also show our progress and try to add some more in the wins column. Because obviously I feel like that's really, every season you want to do that. But after a year like last, where, you know, you're learning pretty much every single night, it'd be really cool to click off some wins and, you know, put that on the resume. So we're not really sure exactly where you're going to find us. We'll kind of hopefully know by the end of January, like I said, as a couple more schedules come out, but we're just going to have to see what's going to be best, you know, what we can do, what we can't. But I mean, man, if I could, you know, realistically within the next 3 years, I'd love to have a full Midwest schedule and, you know, maybe even be located out there, because that is where it's at for sprint car racing. But with us being in Oregon and there not being as much, you know, we kind of have to take advantage of what we have around here and also try to support that, because they're trying to build racing up. So it'd be nice to, you know, like I said, to be there and support that being another car.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask you, Tanner, put me in your shoes 5 years from now. What am I going to see? How am I going to be living if I'm Tanner Holmes 5 years from now?
You know, I'm not sure. It could go many different ways. But, you know, where I would like our program to go is I'd like to hopefully build it up. You know, I would not mind driving for someone else. Obviously, if I got an opportunity, you know, you're going to take what you can get. But I feel like my dream is more to build up my own car, similar to a Rico Abreu or a Brian Brown, and, you know, own my own operation, control where it runs. Maybe not even attached necessarily to a series and be a full-time outlaw or full-time all-star. It would be awesome just to kind of go wherever we want and kind of make our own schedule. And I don't plan on stopping any of the content stuff. I want to continue to build that up as well, and hopefully even add to that side of things. You know, I really want to get someone that can actually help, be like a filmer, to get some different stuff at the races. Obviously I need to be 100%, you know, as I can behind the wheel as I am, but, you know, if you have someone else doing it, it makes it a little bit easier for parts of it. But yeah, just want to continue to build my program, you know, be racing with the Outlaws, the All-Stars, Knoxville, do all that, and ultimately just be a race car driver. At least at the current moment, that's the direction I would like to head to. But you never know. You see what doors open up, you know, what doors close, and, you know, each month things change so much. And, you know, I always do say though, you're one phone call away from that opportunity. You're hoping. You just gotta be ready to answer and execute on it.
Well, Tanner, I'm hoping to see you in a World of Outlaws C tier within the next 5 years. I believe you can do it, kid. You got a hell of a personality to you. You're really good at what you do. You're a great driver, and you're very driven. Tanner, to end this off here, I'm going to give you a little second, first of all, to talk about any of the sponsors that are helping you do what you're doing right now. And then go ahead and plug all of your social medias, just so anybody watching can go ahead and slide over to those.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the big people that have been in my corner the last couple seasons. First, my family, my dad and my mom put so much into, what we do, and our lives are completely different because we're racers, and that's the pathway we're going down, as well as even my sister Carly, because she sacrifices a lot. So I'm behind the seat. And then, she also gets to run some races as well. And then my older sister, I mean, she sacrifices everything to go to the races with us as well. So we're kind of all in it together. One of my big supporters, though, you see them on the side of my car. We have Next Gen Def, Carson Oil, and On-Site Screeners. Those are three big people that support me and have for a while. And then two that are also going to be joining back again next year. My buddy Kyler Shaw, Fast Four Media. He's been supporting me the last couple of seasons and just been someone that I've met through racing, specifically Red Bluff, actually. And that's another one of those relationships that you meet someone, 7 years ago, and all of a sudden they're part of your sprint car team. And then one of my more recent partners, Earth Environmental, they're out of Northern California, and they are going to be helping again next year, as well as supporting Carly. So just, love to have people in our circle that love sprint car racing, love racing in general, and just, want to be involved. And then my social medias are just Tanner Holmes or at Tanner Holmes 18 everywhere: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I pretty much try to post stuff every single day. So there's always something from me in your feed.
And if you can't find those, go to the description below. You're going to find all of those linked in the description here. Tanner, I very much appreciate you taking the time here on a Sunday night after the holiday to have a little conversation with me here. It was really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. I just, love talking racing. Thank you for having me, and, keep promoting everything. The more content we have in the sport, the better. I think that's one thing dirt racing kind of is, it's just starting to get the come up, and more people are getting involved. So awesome for having me, and just appreciate it.
You've been listening to the fastest podcast on the planet. My name is Dan, sitting with Tanner Holmes. Thank you so much for listening.